All right, guys, like we mentioned before the break, we are joined by the Chief Operating Officer of NASCAR right here on Stacking Pennies, Mr. Steve O'Donnell. Welcome to the show.
How are you guys, man? Thanks for having me. Sorry I'm not in person. We'll make it up next time for sure.
We'll there's always an open seat, especially Jonathan's, for whenever you want to come in, we'll kick him out. But
you think you're saying I can take him?
You can definitely take him.
I think I just concede, to be honest with you. Come on down, Steve.
It's a smart move.
All right, sounds good.
From everybody's perspective, I think a really great season, 19 different winners. Joey Logano bookends the season, LA Clash win, championship win. From the inside, what was your perspective on the year?
Man, it was it felt like 10 years, Corey. It was pretty crazy. I think you go from the high of, even the Coliseum, right? Can we even race in there, let alone doing it with a new race car? And then you guys pulled off a hell of a show. I thought, everybody really happy kicking off the year. And so we were on a pretty good run. And then we had some challenges, certainly around the safety stuff that we're still working through. So for us, it was hard to kind of celebrate much other than the fact that, most of the time, the races were really good. I mean, we got the best guys in the world out there competing and a lot of door-to-door action. So, that was great, but it was great just to get to the finish line in Phoenix also and kind of put a wrap on the season and then go try and make improvements on the stuff that we can control.
So you mentioned the things you can control, right? There's a lot more levers on this next-gen car for NASCAR as a league to kind of pull, whether it's competition, whether it's safety. Let's shelf the safety talk for a minute because that's been the buzzword. We're working on rear clips. We're working on headrest surrounds. Everybody's been pretty transparent to that. But on the competition side, seems like short tracks and road courses have just been a sticking point with the fan bases. Now, I have my theories, but what is the direction that you guys would like to see this next-gen car go competitively?
Yeah, I agree with the fans. So you look at small body work, right? We didn't have that many races. But you take Martinsville, for instance, and, the thing that caught my eye and you heard this from, BJ, even good race car driver, right? But he's a lap down and he's able to hold off the leader, I think for 50 laps, right? Just kind of shifting and getting off the gas. And that's a problem for us. So if you got a good car and you're out there and you're able to pass guys, you should be able to do that. And so we looked at what's happening at short tracks. You look at the brakes on the road courses, they're so good. So this car is different for sure, but it presents some challenges on both short tracks and road courses. So we're looking at a lot of things around the aero, certainly looking at some things around the tires, but that's going to be our big focus in the off season is both road courses and short tracks for sure.
Well, there's been a big project Hendrick Motorsports is kind of developing, but also the Garage 56 going to Le Mans next year. And in some of the meetings, we've heard that there are some aero benefits from the G56 car that we might try to implement on our cars. What sort of direction are we trying to go with the aero gains and losses from that car to our car?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it's going to be around the underbody of the car. So, for Le Mans, we've got to take a ton of weight out of that car and we got to look at some different things, still be safe. But there's a lot of things we've looked at in the wind tunnel that we found on that car that I think we can try for, fairly inexpensive way to go about it, particularly on the short track. So you'll see us most likely go test something up in Richmond. I appreciate you volunteering to go up there with us and make that happen. So, but I think there's going to be some good things, at least, from what we've seen already, wind tunnel and a lot of the sim data, it looks really good in terms of getting rid of some of the challenges as we've seen, particularly on the short tracks. And then, ultimately we got to look at shifting, and do we want to eliminate that? How can we work with the engine builders to improve upon that also?
So the car obviously has been deemed next gen. Right now it's this gen because it was next gen when we were developing. Now we race it for a year. Now it's just the car.
The car, yes.
What is the next gen of the current car now with the EV push, with the way the racing is going? It seems almost like an EV push has softened up a bit because we heard a little bit about an EV
Yeah.
series. We might try a couple different times. What's the future direction of the current car?
Yeah, so let's look at just the current car in general, right? You guys are all so damn good at finding everything, right? Horsepower, aero, and so our job for the most part, going into 23 and even 24 is trying to limit a lot of those gains as much as we can. That's the game, right? The teams are going to go out, the best engineers of the world, and try and find things, but the reason we put this car in place was to make it so that we had multiple drivers winning. And if we start to see it go in a direction where, one team's just absolutely dominating, I don't think we've done our job. So it's going to be key now that we've got a year under our belts to make sure that we're continuing to dial that in so that everybody can go out there and feel like they got a shot once they unload off the truck. And then as you look at, where we're going in the future, a lot of talk on EV, particularly because that comes from a lot of the OEMs, but for us, we got to be all things to all people. And at the end of the day, we got to be entertaining, and people want to show up and they want to go to an event and they want to have fun. And, what I've seen, at least around EV racing so far, there's maybe some fun off track, but the racing is not that. And so, we got a lot of work to do. If we're going to be in that space, how do we do it? What's the look and feel of the car? So we're building kind of a mule car, so to speak, and we'll beat it up a little bit, see what we can learn. But we're also going to be looking at, hydrogen space, alternative fuels, all kinds of things, because we got to be on the forefront of that and not just put all our eggs in one basket.
You guys have been on the forefront of adjusting the schedule in terms of flexibility, moving different dates from certain markets, going back to North Wilkesboro, going to the street circuits of Chicago. We've heard rumblings of now there's other cities picking up the phone and calling us, wanting to line up some street races. Is there any particular market that we're not in at the moment that we really are looking towards, whether it's international or domestic?
I think domestic, you'd probably look at the Northwest and Colorado. If you get Denver, Seattle, there's a reason we went out to Portland just to see, what the turnout would be for us. We had an Xfinity race in the pouring rain and people showed up, and it was pretty cool. So that market would be big for us. And then certainly Canada, we've always had a stock car series up there. We went Montreal with the former Busch series. And one of the things that, I kind of learned going up there this year was, we didn't bring Cup. So we haven't necessarily brought, the Cup series to Canada or the Cup series to Mexico. So there's a lot of interest from both those places, Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, they're all talking to us, Montreal, Toronto. So there's a lot of interest. I think the key for us is going to be, how do we balance this? I mean, you grew up on short tracks. Our fans love short tracks. So, we don't want to turn it into a 30 race road course schedule, right? So we got to balance, where we're going to take a race and what kind of racetrack we're going to migrate that to.
Are there any ovals, international or places? I mean, whether it be Kern County out in Bakersfield, California, like, are there short tracks, or even there's an oval track in Chihuahua, Mexico? Like, are there ovals that you guys look across the world at, be like, oh, we might be able to race there?
Yeah, no, there's not a lot, but that's a good question. So Mexico for sure, they'd have some work to do around, kind of the infrastructure and, just different things going on. But there's a couple of cool places from an oval standpoint. Brands Hatch over in England, it's a road course, but it's got a little bit of an oval feel to it, kind of our style of racing. That would be pretty cool too. And then, who knows with the Coliseum, that there's not a lot of stadiums in the U.S. just because they went that Olympic style. But, you start going to Europe and some other places and you could see that, I wouldn't say in the immediate future, but there's some things we can do. And the challenge for us, but it's also a huge opportunity, may not be in my time here, but, seeing the sport grow and grow. We're going to be down in Brazil this week. People may start building ovals because they see that, hey, this is the future and that's where we want to be.
You are a marketing guy, started as such, and now you've kind of transitioned to almost you're probably drinking out of more of a competition hose than you want to at the moment with the development of the next gen car, but you found your way back into the track side stuff just as much as the competition side with fan engagement, with hospitality outside the track. What's the direction of trying to make a NASCAR race more of an event like we're used to seeing, whether it be football game, fair,
Yeah,
F1
yeah.
race?
No, you nailed it. I think that's our biggest opportunity is, we hired Michael Verlotti, who's a really good dude. We worked together for a long time. And he came back and is really looking at what do we got to do. He's gone to all kinds of different events and said, all right, here's what we do well. And here's what we got to change. And, as you know, Corey racing, driver introductions have been the same every year, right? The fan zone's been the same. So just enhancing all those things of what can we do to make it fun again? How do we get things where the fans want to come and certainly watch the race? But our fans spend a lot of time at the track. So what else can we do to entertain them? And, Michael's already made some good changes to what we're going to see, for next year, especially. And then getting some folks maybe outside the sport who've never been to come sample NASCAR, promote it a little bit for us and talk to people about, why they should come out to the races.
You, over the course of your NASCAR career, you've been the one that sticks your neck out for a lot of the competition changes, stages, playoff formats. On down the list, where you're the guy that has to answer to the media. How and what potentially do you see going forward? Because we're always trying to change the format to try to keep people's interest, keep it fresh, keep it moving, stay up to date on the cutting edge of entertainment. Are you pretty happy with the overall competitive package that NASCAR presents right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We get accused, probably rightly so, right, of so many changes and constant change, and there's the I won't say old school view, but it's a short track view of, hey, just race for points all year long and call it a day, get rid of the playoffs, get rid of stages. That kind of coupled with, all right, what would our races look like in the final 10? How would they be different? Do you have different guys going after it maybe, or different strategies in a race based on the format we have now? And I'd kind of punt a little bit on that, Corey, and say I think we got a really good time right now with you guys and the driver core to sit down, during the off season and part of next year and just say, hey, what's working? What could we do different that you guys see? What do you like? What do you not like? Because it's been there for a little bit now, so we're seeing, all right, here's how guys race. Here's some different strategies, but let's take a look at it as a whole and have that dialogue instead of just coming to the drivers and saying, hey, here's the format, let's go racing. I think it's an opportunity for us to sit down and beat it up a little bit and throw out some new ideas.
So there was several heated opinions of Ross's move at Martinsville.
Yes, there was.
And that son of a bitch went to a place that nobody's ever been to before, and it paid off for him.
Yep.
Now, I could see, there's been talk, because Martinsville, of all places, is probably the most advantageous. There might be 3 or 4 you can justify doing it in the right scenario, which people can say they're going to do it, but they probably wouldn't. What is the process in which NASCAR as a league addresses the drivers or car owners or just internally and makes a rule for or against, or just addresses that happening again?
Yeah, you were in that fun meeting in Phoenix. That was there's certainly a lot of loud voices.
Hang on. Could I let me just tell you my perspective of this meeting. I'm literally in the middle. So I'm literally right in the middle. If there's 5 rows, I'm literally in the middle row, middle seat. OD and the brass are up on the front right, and I was stuck in the crosshairs of words back and forth, right? People saying no, this, whatever. And I look over my shoulder, and Ross Chastain is in the furthest seat in the back row opposite of the brass with a plate of spaghetti. And he's just like, and people are up in arms. Dude, that picture, that mental image of Ross Chastain eating that plate of spaghetti while people were up in arms saying how BS it was awesome.
No, I think, for us, look, certainly a lot of passion in that room. The biggest thing that we got to look at going forward is, I think even if you ask Ross, right, when, what happened, he made that move and incredible. I mean, the guts it took to do that, but I think he'd also tell you that it didn't feel too good either. And so are we going to force guys in that position? Do we want to do that? Or are there some things we can do, particularly on Martinsville, that would stop that from happening? So, we'll look at that. I think that's going to be us with a lot of the race teams and talking about, what's the reality of that happening at what tracks, and then do we want it? So a little bit of me kicking the can, but I think you'll see us react in some way to do something particular around Martinsville.
So you also, when you came in, you were with the All-American Series, and certainly have a heart for the short track roots of it, because strong roots ultimately
Yes,
affect how successful we are at the top. I believe there's a little bit of a disconnect right now between the Cup Series and like your NASCAR Whalen All-American Series, right? Or your modified series. Yep. How, in your best judgment, do you think you can try to bridge that gap and get local fans and drivers supporting the big series and vice versa?
So I think we can do all we can, but we're gonna need some help from you guys, candidly. And it's that relationship of guys who've come up through that short track, are relatable when they're on camera on Saturday, Sunday. They're talking about where they came from, and fans understand that. And I think, not tooting your horn because you're here, but you do that, and fans appreciate that. And we've got to do a better job from our standpoint, showing those relationships and where drivers came from, showing some of those grassroots races around our national broadcasts as well. There's a lot of opportunity there. And I think it comes from the entire industry, just, recognizing that on a Sunday, when you're interviewed, any one of us, right, talking about how we got here, why we got here, and thanking those people who, probably were racing Saturday and Sunday, working on their cars all night long, and then tuning in on Sunday, and would probably like a thank you for being a race fan.
A lot of shift coming to the sport over the next couple of years. Obviously, all the focus is on the new TV contract, because that's essentially the lifeblood of the sport. But besides that, because right now everybody's like, oh, the TV deal, that's on the horizon for sure. What are some other things that people might not understand or realize that have as much of an impact on the future of the sport and trajectory of the sport besides the TV contract?
Couple things. One of the biggest needle movers we have are the guys holding the wheel. People like to believe in their heroes, and so getting the crop of drivers and the young drivers that we have, I think we got a good mix with some veterans and some guys coming up showing a little more personality. That's on us, right, to work on the financial model so drivers are able to be themselves more, and if they can do that, I think that's a huge opportunity for the sport. OEMs, I think we've been pretty aggressive. It's been a challenge, but if we can get one or two new OEM partners, to the owners and to the race teams, that'd be really big for us. Having them go out and promote different race teams and different drivers in their ad campaigns, for sure. And then, I think you're seeing a little bit more, particularly on Trackhouse. You guys do a good job as well of, it was a race team, but it's also, a little bit of an entertainment company, right? That you branch out and you do some things differently. And you have a podcast, it's not just, throwing a label on a car and going racing. There's a lot of different things with celebrities and your friends and family who come into the racetrack. So seeing a little bit more of that too is a big opportunity for us.
You touched on something that I always love to talk about, and it's a bit of a buzzword on Reddit. And it's new OEMs, because everybody likes the renderings of the Dodge Chargers and this and that. Yep. Because I feel like I have somewhat of understanding of like the red tape goes into when you're trying to sell a manufacturer on why they should invest their money in the sport. Like, what is it besides if it makes sense with a C, that like is the roadblocks or red tape to get through to convince another OEM to come in?
Yeah, the biggest thing, number one is cost, particularly around the engine package that we have right now. It's a huge investment, that you've got to make in terms of the development, and then, who's going to make that and what's going to happen. Certainly now you're seeing, all the technology that's going into the sport with sim, and, so what investment will you need to make there? So part of our job is to try and, kind of put a box around that as much as possible, still make it cool, but make it so a new OEM wants to come in. And then the biggest one really, Corey, is what's under the hood. A lot of these guys are going electric, or they want to pursue hybrid or hydrogen, or, so our job is to kind of, thread the needle and get to the right place to where we can bring a couple in and have some different technologies showcased, maybe not in Cup, but, Xfinity, Truck, Cup, all weekend. We can show some different technologies under the hood of a truck or a car, and have it be a place where a fan can come out and see all different kinds of racing. How
likely are we to see a new manufacturer come in the next 5 years?
That's a tough question. I think there's certainly interest. So, we are having conversations right now with an OEM. So, I'd like to say likely, but it's tough. How soon is electrification going to come, or where do you want to be? And, at the end of the day for us, it's great if you want to be in the electric space, but we want to be entertaining, right? We're a sport. We want to make sure our fans come out there and love what they see. And we got to balance that.
That's definitely a tough spot, because you also don't want to be labeled as the dinosaur series with internal combustion engines, right? So how do you try to stay on the cutting edge of technology where a lot of guys are going EV, but you need also the manufacturers spend money in the sport to market?
Yeah, no, you got to, that's where we got to kind of try and be all things to all people, right? And what's really unique is you can go to one OEM 2 years ago and you'll hear, if you guys aren't going hybrid, I'm out. And that same OEM, 6 months later, if you're not, I don't want to go hybrid. If you're not EV, I'm out. And it's changing so quickly. And then, you've got all the other technologies out there where, there's some cool things in the works where, we thought would be way, way off in the future that might be a little bit easier to pull off. So, I think we can get there. It's going to take a lot of research and a lot of work, but we got a lot of smart people in the industry who can help pull that off.
No doubt. Well, obviously you're not a race car driver. You watch them a lot on the weekends, and sometimes you take yelling back and forth with the driver so you can associate with this question. I usually ask, if you had to pick one race car and one race track, what do you pick the rest of your life? I'm going to change the question for you.
All right.
If you had to build one racetrack and put it in a market that we don't go to, what kind of racetrack would you build, and where do you put it?
Oh man. Oh, that's a great question. I would, I just love Daytona, but I would say that's because of the history. But if I had to build one, I'd build a short track. I'd build a Bristol, and I'd build it right in the middle of New York City.
Central Park.
With
a dome on it.
Yes. I'd have three. Because our fans are everywhere. I'd go New York City. I'd go in the middle of the U.S. somewhere. I don't care if it's cornfield with a short track, no walls, no anything. Just show up, Field of Dreams race, and then I'd go one out west.
All right. Where out west would you
go? Well, we got the most fans in California, which I know no one believes, but so I'd probably go out there. I'd go to San Diego.
Yes. Might as well just move it on South Tijuana.
There you go.
get the Mexican fans.
That'd
and
be
the
perfect.
American. Yes.
That'd be perfect.
Here we go. Half in Tijuana, half in the United States.
I like that.
That's a racetrack, boys.
Yep.
Could get a little bit hairy.
We need to do. We need to get you in a race. We need to just drive across the U.S. Get 20 cars and just
cannonball run.
Yeah.
And when you get pulled over, say OD said I can do it.
Well, that won't help you, man.
And then last question, probably wouldn't. Last question: what's the most embarrassed you've been at the racetrack?
Oh man, most embarrassed I've been at the racetrack. God, that's a really good question. You know what it was? I used to have to do all the drivers' meetings, and I had to introduce the celebrities. And what's the guy from Old School? He's got a brother.
Chuck, you're the movie guy.
That'd be Luke Wilson.
Yeah. So is Luke?
Owen Wilson. Okay.
Which one is in Old School?
Luke's in Old School, and Owen is the other brother, the blonde.
The famous one.
So Owen was out in Sonoma, and I decided to ad lib because I saw that we had Wilson, and I said, which I should never do. And I was like, "Hey man, loved you in Old School, hell of a job." And I turned around and I was like,
"Oh no.
That's the wrong guy." And there was no recovery from that one. So that was a pretty tough one. I got a lot of grief. And then Ken just used to text me every driver's meeting that I made up some word that I won't divulge, but he would text me in the middle of talking every single driver's meeting, which was a fantastic move.
OD, have some fun other in New York City. Have a great off season. I appreciate you jumping on Stacking Pennies with us.
Hey, man, appreciate you and all you guys do for the sport, man. Have a good off season, bud.
Y'all too.